Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. Action-packed weekend of motorsport all over the world. Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3, W Series, WRC, Superbikes, NASCAR was a big old race. Indycar, but probably the biggest race. We'll leave that to last. Caterham Championship 2022. But we got
drama.
There was drama, and I'll give a little clue. I'm aching a little bit.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Aching in the shoulders. But let's kick off with Formula 1 because that's really what we're here to talk about today, I guess.
Yeah, very well. It all started, of course, before we even get to the race, with this spy scandal growing now. The Aston Martin looks the same as the Red Bull, and former Red Bull employees are now working at Aston Martin, and it was all there was lots of insinuations coming on from the Red Bull camp.
Lawrence Stroll, he's got a few quid. He wants the best people. I'm telling you that.
Not that
they can't really complain because Red Bull are doing exactly the same to Mercedes. Red Bull are taking a lot of the Mercedes drivetrain team, and so it's.
I think unless you actually take physical drawings or downloaded CAD cams, actually, I don't think you can be done just for taking your brain with you, can you? So, I mean, if you take a brain with you and say, well, I know that Red Bull were working on this theory, that's not illegal to then create that same theory, is it? So I don't know. Oh dear. Anyway. So then it kicked off. Then Collie was exciting, of course. Was again driving LeClerc spinning off on his first pole run, therefore having to be very careful to make sure he got a decent second run, and then blitz in the field. The Ferraris were just on fire in qualifying. Well, the Sainz had his problems again. He had to change the chassis, I think, and he had a fuel leak or some problem. So poor old Carlos Sainz's season goes from bad and then to worse. And then in the race, it got even worse. Yeah, I mean, because you probably didn't watch it live, did you? Because you were busy having small incidents with Verstappen. But Damon, I was still tweeting that is this new formula really working as well as we were promised? This follow more closely, and all the drivers are saying we can follow more closely. And this, to me, Barcelona was a test, because it's the track where no overtaking used to happen. And Damon Hill's calling me curmudgeonly today on the Twitter because I've been saying, well, I don't really think it's working that well because...
What's he calling you? Explain what that word means.
Curmudgeonly.
To people like me that went to normal schools and haven't got very good vocabulary.
Old moaning person, which maybe, perhaps I'm being a bit curmudgeonly, but I'm only talking as an observer without any payment from any Sky or anybody else on my payroll. They're for a completely independent opinion, which you could like or not like. Because the first 6 laps of the race, they spread out again. They were all over a second apart because they couldn't follow closely enough on those opening laps. Therefore, they were all outside of DRS range. And the promise originally to me was that this whole new rule book was almost to get rid of DRS. We'll be able to make cars follow slow closely, racing like Formula Fords, So I'm merely pointing out that until drama happened, it was looking like being a Barcelona bore. But then, of course, we had first we had poor old K-Mag mashing into Lewis, which is a bit of a shame.
What a start for Lewis. He's having a mare, isn't he?
And it was definitely Kevin's fault. He sort of tried to say Lewis had hit him, but he was making a brave move like K-Mag does round the outside. But Lewis just clipped him. He was. Those two were out of the top running, and then of course it was Sainz that went next, wasn't it? Spinning off into the kitty litter. So that's what broke the front pack up. And then of course Max making a mistake. Actually, funny enough, we were talking just last week about the motorbikes in MotoGP and leaders falling and crashing out of the lead on their own. We say, well, it never happens in car racing. And then this weekend we had first Sainz and then the sight of Max, catching his slide, but having to go through the travel and dropping back. And then, yes, the race was very exciting because first, Perez, of course, dropped behind George at the start, George Russell. So he caught him up. He actually tapped George at turn 1, which George managed to hold on to a bit of a skid and a slide. But then we had this sight of George for many laps, holding back Perez. It was amazing defending. It was brilliant. the kid's not only got talent, but he's got a brain, because the way he defended very correctly, but not, not naughty, but so close to being naughty. He just waited till the end and then moved right before the braking zone, and Perez couldn't get by him.
And you don't realise that in racing, I didn't realise, I thought it was all about being the fastest, but you don't realise it's like a game of chess as well. Yeah. You have to have all angles covered.
But they're coming down at about 200 miles an hour to brake at 50 metres before the corner, so when the peripheral vision of where your braking point is, looking in the mirror, when do I move? Because if he's so distracted moving that he misses braking point and be off. So the concentration to do, and they're playing with, recharging buttons.
Unbelievable. It's wonderful. It's hard enough for me when I knock an indicator on and I wonder where that's going. But an ex-racing driver friend of mine said to me, ex-Formula 1 driver, Le Mans driver, said, don't ever look in your mirrors like that. Always keep your helmet straight.
I wonder who that was.
Look out the corner of your eyes. I'm trying to do funny eyes. So don't let them know that they're there, which is I did that on the weekend and it paid dividends. So thank you, Tiff, Needell.
It was good. But so it was then fantastic entertainment, those few laps with, George holding back the Red Bulls, then leading eventually, because of course Leclerc was dreaming away at the front of the field after Max had spun off. The engine just stopped on the Ferrari. So all of a sudden, George, I think it was only about one lap, was leading before Max, screaming and shouting about his DRS flap not opening, which was another amusing part of drama.
Oh, Max, please, why blame your team and get on the...
No, I would. No, I'm sorry, Max. I'm with Max on this one. If my flap was not working properly, I would be screaming down the radio.
Would you really?
Yeah.
It's as frustrating as it be.
Well, yeah. Well, you've got to vent your frustration somewhere, You've
Keep
got to
your toys in your pram.
Well, no. But the DRS again. This is what I said about Twitter about. So the DRS. So they're on George's gearbox at the end of the straight when they couldn't quite get by. You've then got turn 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 before you get to the next DRS zone. By which time they were over nearly a second behind. The first DRS zone, they caught up again, the second, but then George goes through turns 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and starts the, start-finish straight, with another 1 second gap, and said they just catch up in the braking zone. So, until the tyre degradation happens or one car's at a big advantage grip-wise, they're still not, in my mind, following that. That's all I was saying, Damon, curmudgeonly or not, I was merely pointing out that the overtaking, they weren't able to follow closely enough. But whilst all this was going on, we virtually missed Lewis's amazing drive. Max then drove his usual solid, fantastic race to win. Perez eventually got by George because they were doing the undertaken, the undercut, and the overcut, and the intercut. Everyone was stopping like 3 times, which also was a bit of a problem in the race because if you saw the midfield pack, which is often one of the most entertaining parts, from 6th down to 12th, at any one point, whoever was 8th may well have been 8th because he had yet to make the 2nd or 3rd pit stop. There was a continual trail of cars coming out of the pit lane to rejoin, dropping.
And that was due to the tyre degradation around the circuit.
So you couldn't really follow. You suddenly I saw Lewis in 8th or 7th. I thought, well, really started about. How did he get there? But of course, at that stage, he had to make another pit stop, so he dropped back to 10th. But then you had the tyre advantage, and that was great entertainment at the end. Obviously, Lewis coming back with fresh tyres and going right up to pass Sainz for 4th place until this water leak problem, which slowed both George and Lewis. But they got to the end. So we do have a glimmer now that there are going to be 6 cars very close together, battling for wins. And so
it's such a long season that it's certainly not over for Mercedes. If they can get their act together, which it looks like they finally have, and with the temperamental issues for Red Bull and Ferrari, then Mercedes has got every good chance to get back into it.
So I was curmudgeonly, Damon, but I'm still looking forward to the pack getting closer. Circuits where overtaking isn't so hard, but I was merely pointing out that unlike everybody, I don't quite think the new regulations are doing quite what we hoped in terms of closeness of following.
But I have to say that Formula One now, there's not that vast gap that there has been for many years. It's
closer. Closer.
You can see Valtteri Bottas up for Alfa Romeo, and you can see
Magnussen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Qualified 8th. It's a shame Kevin made that move on Lewis, really. And Shuey got to the top 10 for the first time. Did he? Got 10th. He's still over half a second off Kevin, but at least Mick was in the top 10. Lando got caught for track limits, which was quite right. He agreed in the end. He was over the white line, and that's how it should be. But he's got tonsillitis. They said he was sick all weekend and had an amazing race because he came through to finish. Well, he finished 8th, But he's got tonsillitis. That's not a quick fix, is it, with Monaco looming?
As well, I think.
Yeah.
One of those things that really.
So yeah, it was all good stuff. I mean, Leclerc went out. Bottas got through to 6th, so he must be happy with that. Ocon had a good run for Alpine, 7th. Lando, as I said, was 5th to 8th. Fernando, I mean, back of the grid, he qualified badly with problems of being held up, but he had a fresh engine, I think, didn't he? And he came from the back to finish 9th. So that was a pretty good run at home for Fernando. But again, nobody noticed it because everyone was going up and down the leader. We were concentrating so much on the battle out front, which is as it should be. And Yuki Tsunoda had a good run to 10th and beating his more illustrious team all weekend. He was quicker than Gasly. So they're not having a good time, are the AlphaTauris at the moment? They're dropping backwards fast as the likes of Haas and Alfa Romeo and McLaren go ahead of them.
Yeah, so congratulations to Max Verstappen, 3 on the spin for him. Bit of fortune with Ferrari engine blowing up on Charles, but good on you, Max. On to Formula 2, Tiff.
Yeah, just quickly, because there's so much racing we've got to talk. Yeah, Filipe Drugovich, this Brazilian guy that looked really good 2 years ago. He's now back, had a bad season last year, so he's in the 3rd year, so he should be winning, but he's back with his MP Motorsport team. And I thought he could well be Brazilian's next Grand Prix driver. We always need a Brazilian on the grid,
do.
Really. That's part and parcel of motorsport. We have to have a Brazilian. Anyway, he's increased his championship lead greatly. He had a reverse point. He qualified 10th. So he should have been on pole for the reverse grid, but somehow he wasn't. I don't know why. He must have got a 4-grid penalty for some reason. So he actually started 4th on the grid for the reverse grid race, won that. And then he was actually back to 10th, which is his qualifying time for the feature race, and came from 10th to win. I mean, he did an amazing open. The MP Motorsport team had already got their car working well. So he stayed out a lot longer on the soft tyres. And then he put on the harder tyre much later than when and just cruised through the pack because they'd all worn out their harder tyres. And put on Jack Doohan, the Aussie. Well, I think he's a real talent. He was on pole. He was led away at the start. He couldn't believe it when this Drugovich came from like 6th to 4th to 5th to 3rd, and then he's in his mirrors. He drove past him, So Jack, having had his best results, didn't look happy, poor lad, because he was still. Where did he come from? But anyway, good for Jack Doohan doing well. And as I said, Drugovich now leading the championship from the healthy points lead over the pre-season favourite, Théo Pourchaire, the young French kid. No joy for the Brits. Ollie Cadwell had a cool one on the 13th, the 14th. Jake Hughes, who qualified in the top 10, I think, had a DNF and a 16th. So no joy there. So Drugovich, Formula 2. Formula 3, again, the Brits not so well. Ollie Bearman had a 12th, then a 5th in the feature race was Zach O'Sullivan, 18th and 27th. But the sprint win, David Vidal, good thing for Spain. He was 12th fastest or something in qualifying, but David Vidal is led from his reverse grid pole to win the sprint race. And the feature race was a dominant win for the French Victor Martins, who also now takes the lead in his championship, looking really good out front. But lots of entertaining battles going on down to the field. Following closely, they all were nibbling at each other, diving here and there. So they're always very entertaining, F2 and F3 nowadays. Whereas W Series, we talk about British interests. We had a 1, 2, 3 on the podium for Britain, thanks to our British ladies. But guess who won?
It's getting boring now.
I know.
She's amazing. But they should have just said, after 2 years, you've won it twice, you've got to move on. The growing star is Abby Pulling. Abby Pulling I think she's about 19, and she was on Jamie's case for the whole race. Alice Powell, again, last year's main challenger to Jamie, had a poorer start, and she caught the other two. No overtaking in the WCs. They couldn't seem to no DRS with them, so they've got no way of overtaking on these sorts of circuits where you can't. So yeah, it was an interesting race, but they put the poor girls out, women, at 7:40 in the morning on Saturday morning. So sadly, probably nobody was watching all their efforts, but it's brilliant fun for those women that have got this fabulous opportunity. I mean, they are having fun. I see all their Twitters and they're mucking about, and they're loving life, and quite rightly so. Well, so it should be. They are loving life because where it leads to travel,
where it takes them. Yeah. Where it takes them, I'm not sure.
So Jamie's got a 27-point lead now going into Miami. So massive. I think
old bank manager's looking for another $500,000, please, Jamie. Bring it in. And she's not spending any money, so she must be stashing the cash somewhere.
Look, I just feel sorry. Like I've said before, I feel sorry for the Jack Goffs of this world that we've mentioned.
Yeah.
I know he's a mate, but they can't get a race, can't get a seat, can't get sponsors.
Well, all the young single-seater boys, they're all trying to battle up into Formula 3.
Anyway, but that's not taking anything away from Jamie. She's clearly the most talented female driver in the world, which is
class of the field. Class of the field.
Exactly. So WRC, both Sebs had a crash, didn't they?
I know we did this last week.
I'm not laughing at it, by the way. I'm not laughing at people crashing.
Only MotoGP fall off while leading. But yeah, the two Sebs who aren't doing the whole World Rally Championship, of course, load for Ford and Ogier and Toyota, just doing a part program, and both crashed out of the World Rally Championship in Portugal. And it was a trick. It was the first gravel rally, I think first full gravel rally of the year, wasn't it? I don't know where we've been before. But it suited them. Elfyn Evans, another British talent that we do have, who we'd hoped to win the World Championships the last 2 years. He was helped because he's had a bad start to the season. In gravel, of course, going first, you have to sweep all the dust away. And Elfyn was about 10th on the road or 9th on the road. Whereas this young kid, Kalle Rovanperä, 21 now, I think, he had to go first. So he was... And in the old days, Loeb and Ogier, they always used to drop back on those rallies because they complain we're road sweeping. And they've tried to find a different way of how do you start. They've had a sort of qualifying system that didn't work. And so they're stuck with this system where if it's a gravel rally and you're leading the championship, you're going to have a bad weekend.
Yeah.
And yet instead, Rovanperä just ground them down, survived the loose, survived leading the way, and came through on, I think he took the lead on the Saturday and concluded his victory by winning the power stage at the end of the day to take quite a big lead in the championship. And this Kalle Rovanperä, there seems to be no... Elfyn was very honest. Elfyn Evans, he was interviewed, and he admitted, he sort of said, oh, this kid's got, more talent than me. He actually said he's naturally talented. He's just... So, Elfyn says, I've got to work really hard, which doesn't mean to say the naturally talented are always going to win. But Elfyn was very honest, and he had a really good second, his best result of the year, I think. But he couldn't match Rovanperä. There were punctures galore. It was yet another puncture fest, unfortunately. So many drivers suffered. But it was quite a good battle for third place because Takamoto Katsuta was having his best rally. He's getting more and more experience, but he was tracked down by who was it? The Spanish boy, Danny Sordo, again another not regular for Hyundai. And he ended up in the first Hyundai home, spoiled to Toyota 1-2-3 by pipping Katsuta to third place. The troubled Toyotas with all the punctures, Thierry Neuville and Octanac 5th and 6th. Then all the Fords down in 7th, 8th and 9th. Craig Breen, Pierre Loubet was the best Ford in 6th, the French by Craig Breen, punctures offs. And Gus Greensmith had so many punctures, I think he didn't have any wheels left. So it was a bit of a rally of attrition, I remember, but the battle out front was epic, and the battle for third was pretty good too. But I'm not sure where next. Where next? The world.
Let's go to Super. Oh, where next are they going?
I was just thinking where they're going.
We're going to
sort
Superbikes.
of rally. I've lost my list. Oh, it's underneath here. It's underneath all the bits of paper. I just want to find out. Now I've started the story. Oh, Italy. They're off to Italy June. That's that time at Corsica. But anyway. See if anyone can beat. There's three on the shotties one, which for rallying is quite amazing.
Yeah, because all sorts happens there. So let's go to Superbikes. It's
it was no MotoGPs. Really. Well, yeah, World Superbikes were in Estoril, and again, it's just this trio. It was a fabulous battle. If you follow bikes, because Jonathan Ray's on a Kawasaki, Toprak Razgatlioglu is on a Yamaha, and Alvaro Bautista on the Ducati. So every manufacturer, because often bike fans, they're very much the manufacturer, they follow whoever's riding their road going, whether they're a Kawasaki boy or Ducati or Yamaha. And it was just another epic weekend. Ray won 2, Bautista won 1, Razgatlioglu had 2 seconds of the third. But the end of the day, Jonathan Ray is now closing the gap on Bautista. So epic stuff at Estoril. British Superbikes.
Donington.
I just saw some of the highlights. There's some horrible shunts they had. Josh Day, I think, was in an induced coma overnight, but he's better today, or better as you can be. Leon Haslam had a high side that the bike broke into 3 pieces when it came to rest.
Awful.
Those bike boys, they're
Awful. Yeah.
Anyway, it was Jason O'Halloran. It's a Yamaha battle there. Yamaha dominated the week. Jason O'Halloran had 2 wins. Kyle Wright had 1 win. And Bradley Ray, who's been leading the championship, was there, had a 3rd, 2 seconds. But O'Halloran is catching Bradley Ray up. So getting closer and closer to British Superbikes, but as always, greatly entertaining.
Yes.
As is NASCAR. The other
race. A
race.
speedy recovery. NASCAR.
For all those bumps and bruises those bike boys have.
Yeah, NASCAR was quite a spectacular event for, well, typical American, I guess.
It was the All-Star race. It wasn't a championship race. This is this one-off once a year, but the winner gets that. It's the $1 million winner race. Held at Texas this year. It used to be a Charlotte special. But there's some big shunts again there. You talk about shunts. Kyle Larson had a tyre blow, smashed into the wall. Then Kyle Busch. A lot of the top runners were taken out with tyres and stuff. Busch had a slow puncture. And he was trying to sort of recover. He was going to the tri-oval, just on not on the high bank corners, the kinky bit, and he was trying to sort of get off to the edge of the road, but Ross Chastain was committed to go to the left of him. As poor old Carl wobbled across with a punch, and Chastain virtually launched himself off the side of Kyle Busch's car. And having gone over the top of Kyle Busch, he then took out Chase Elliott, who was innocently driving around turn 1 on his own.
Well, we might come on to a similar sort of story with that in a moment.
So, NASCAR is over. So Ryan Blaney was the bloke for Ford, came through his Ford to win. He had drama enough. You talk about, he crossed the line. There was yellows out. And always, they have to go back and see if the yellow happened before the leader crossed the line. They've got to do a green-yellow restart. But everyone thought Blaney had won. He undid his seatbelts and took his curtain down to wave at the crowds. And then he was told he had to have they worked out, the yellows came out about 3 feet before he crossed the line. So he had to have a bit of panic to get his net back up, and he's put his belts back on. And Denny Hamlin, who came second, was moaning about it afterwards. There's always moaning and it's great stuff. Great stuff. And then last night up until midnight, of course, I was transfixed by IndyCar qualifying. Well, actually, I didn't watch the NASCAR because that was actually the middle of the night.
No, the IndyCar.
I had to. I was just. I mean, they're doing 230 miles an hour,
and somebody crashed at 230 miles.
Well, they didn't actually in the 12 shootout from 12 down to 6. But it looks so serene. But then you just see these tiny wiggles, and the commentators are almost because it's this far from going inwards and hitting a wall at 200 miles an hour. But Scott Dixon came out at the end, the last one out, his quickest in the top 12, and did this new record. I thought the commentators were saying it was the second fastest, but someone said it was a new record. I haven't checked it all out. But 234.046 miles an hour average.
Unbelievable.
And it's just, you can't
that's
see
racing. That's not like on a high-speed bowl or a test.
No, it's around Indianapolis, which hasn't got that much banking. I don't know what the angle are. It's nothing like Daytona where you're up against a wall.
But it was a fabulous racing. You've got other cars. You're racing. It's not.
Well, not for his qualifying was.
Not for the road. Oh, okay.
This is single. Yeah, you go out single laps, and he went last. Yeah, but they race at 2:30. Don't worry, they will be this weekend, side by side at 230. Alex Palou, the reigning champion of the Spanish, but he was second. And they're going around and they're changing each lap because the tyres go off big time. It's 3 laps. Don't get it wrong, Tiff. You have to do 3 laps. That's 4 laps. What am I talking? It's 4 laps. So as they say, it's 16 corners, as they call it in America. That's turning left. Of course, the tyres go off. They degrade. You're doing that sort of speed for 4 laps, which is 5-10 miles, And so they're going and they're changing the jacker, which changes the sort of right turning, and they're changing the bars front and rear, and they're changing the engine management. And they're doing all these little things going down the straight at 240 miles an hour with another corner looming up. And Alex Palou, the Spanish champion, he was second. Rinus VeeKay, who's the IndyCar version of Max Verstappen. He's a young Dutch kid in his orange car. Really talented. He was 3rd fastest. So we got, mixed American veteran Scott Dixon's 41 against the Spanish and VeeKay.
And sorry, can you clarify? Is it orange because he's Dutch, or orange because that's the national colour, or orange because it's McLaren?
No, he's not the McLaren. He's not McLaren orange. That's Pato Award. He was only 7th. He didn't make the last 6 shootout. So I don't know whether the sponsor's Dutch, but he's definitely looking Dutch. Romain Grosjean, then you've got this, rejected, well, not rejected, but sort of dropped to the back of the field Grand Prix driver who's loving life out there. He didn't want to do Indy last year, so he's done it this year. I think it's the first Indy. I think that's right. He did Indy last year. But, he was also, he got into the top 12. He was 9th on the grid with only, really, I'd gone home if I was him, only 231.999 average speed for 4 laps. Then you've got the other great story of Jimmy Johnson, this NASCAR driver, NASCAR megastar. I'm not sure how old he is now. He's well into his 40s. He's won everything in NASCAR, retired, and he did the road courses last year in IndyCar and spun off a lot, made it look silly. Slowly, moved into the bottom, 20, bottom 15 racing on street courses. But he didn't want to do the ovals. He's back. This is his first Indy. He's won it in a NASCAR. And now he's 12th quickest, but he had this moment. He literally at 230 miles an hour, a few kissed the wall, started to actually brush the wall. And he actually got enough opposite lock on to leave a black mark on the road at 230 miles an hour and caught it and held on.
I bet he left another mark somewhere on his overalls as well. On his,
I've got so much respect for it. I think IndyCar is fabulous. It's the fact they do these ovals and street courses and road courses. Not much joy for the Brits. Callum Ilott, he's had a good run. He was in the top 6 of the street course at Indy last weekend. He's 19th, so fair for a rookie season. But Jack Harvey, the one that he's led a few laps at Indy in the last couple of years in a lesser team, but he had this switch to the Rahal Letterman team, his big break to move up to a bigger professional team. But the cars aren't working. He's had an awful season so far. He was 32nd, slowest of all those that got to drive around the track. But Graham Rahal, who led the fastest car at Indy last year, was only 21st. So a miserable time for Jack Harvey. And a sadder story is Stefan Wilson, Justin Wilson's son and brother, who of course we lost so sadly in IndyCar. But Stefan got together enough money and sponsorship, and he's got help from all the teams are sort of helping with parts. But they had to change the engine after the last warm-up, didn't get out to qualify at all. So he got no time. I think he could have qualified to anything from 20th to 30th. He was on he's getting in the field. But he will be there right at the back. So watch out for Stefan Wilson. And just, again, last year, he got the budget together for the same thing, just to do Indy. And a lot of drivers do this, just got to do Indy. And he was the first to come into the pits early on. And a lot of cars did the same thing. There was a brake bias problem that the Indy cars have. And when he hit the brakes from 200 miles an hour coming down to 50, whatever it is, in the middle of the brake, he spun round because he locked the rears. And I think he touched the wall. He was out, just after about 20 laps. So let's hope Stefan gets the finish. And I think he wants to do that, for his brother, Justin, who was such a star.
Absolutely. Can we leave these multi-billion-dollar championships?
Because there was more drama. There was big drama.
Joking aside, Caterham Racing, you've never seen anything like it. I was transfixed because I watched so many of the other races this weekend. You've got races that are being won by 5,000ths of a second, not just one. This is happening time and time again. It's the closest racing. The 270 race on the Saturday, I've never seen anything like
how many classes are there? You said there's 270s, there's 310. What's the top class? 310s, is it?
So you start with the Academy.
And these are Caterham weekends, aren't they? So if you go along, it's just Caterham racing.
Well, actually, there are a couple of little like Citroen C1s and stuff that just fill a little bit of time. But you start with Academy, then you go to Road Sport, which I'm in now. Then it goes up to 270, then 310s, then the 420s. So and the 420s are the proper race cars on the slick,
sequential pump actions.
Yeah, but which we're going to get Vicky Period in, by the way. So which would be quite good.
Sure? Have you told her what it's like? Are you sure?
She's quite excited, but she's just laughing, saying, "I'm not very good with a right-hand drive car." But
if I'm talking to Vicky Period, just quickly, a lot of people might have seen her crash her Porsche at Monza, which was on YouTube and stuff.
A few weeks
back. I was speaking to Harry King. I'm going to mention a minute because he's at Monaco this week, and he's our Porsche 911 Super Cup whiz kid at the moment, and he knows that bump that Vicky lost the rear end on. And he said, with the ABS, yes, that could well be. You've got to be wary of it and easy on the brakes. I think because they have ABS, which she had, because she's not new to it, she's probably just going maximum force and presuming the ABS would stop any problems.
Yeah.
So to Vicky, Harry King, Porsche superstar, says, that happens. Anyway, you're now getting into Caterham. So
yes, it was just
ABS.
It was a fantastic weekend. Saw the academy drivers out on track for the first time. Of course, they did the Kerber Sprint, which is their baptism, but then they went out on track, and Stetson 300 is quite a severe track.
Challenging circuit.
Yes, but they did so well. They're very aggressive. They seem more aggressive than us, but the actual races were quite tame compared to the Academy 2021.
Your first race was good. You got to the front of the second pack. I saw the timesheets. You had a good first race.
You genuinely. I mean, look, there's some very talented people, but you genuinely need a little bit of luck with the quality. And I didn't get it. As I got my fastest lap, it was a red flag, so I had to come in on quali. So I qualified 11th, finished 7th, and like you said, it ends up being several different races all the way through. There's 34 cars on the grid, I think. the lead pack of 6. They broke away because as soon as you start defending, that's it. The gap comes. And I was defending all I had for that first race. All I could see was people in my rearview mirror. They were so close. Little few taps in here, and the lead changed. Our lead for our sort of secondary race changed so many times, but managed to hold on for that second race. Really, got 7th place. The usual suspects were out there, but it was great because you had Jeff, who won both races for the road sport. Charlie Lower did incredibly well, and also Freddie Chiddick. So Charlie won the first race, came second in the first race.
And then you the second race, Paul?
Unbelievable. I was so gutted. So the only thing that I think we're unanimous with the people on the grid and you in agreeing with is my starts are pretty good.
Yeah.
And I got another great
blinder.
Start. Absolute blinder off the lights, off the line. And then the two people in front of me, Gareth Lucas and Rob Domain, they closed the gap, so I couldn't go between them. No problem. Great, good defending. So I went around the outside of Rob, and I'm already thinking it's incredible racing. You're already thinking I'm got so much momentum here. I'm going to be in 3rd, maybe 4th place by the first corner. This is amazing from 7th position. And then within a blink of the eye, Rob Domain hit Freddie Chiddick, who missed the gear. He hit Freddie, jumped up, landed in my path, and I just did exactly that. I was launched over Rob Domain, went up about that sort of angle, didn't flip over. I thought it was going to spin, which was quite lucky. But I backed into the Armco, red flag, and that was my day over. And I'm kind of got a few aches and pains now, but nothing too bad. But then straight after the restart, typical Academy 2021 team now in road sport, straight after the restart, there was another red flag. Poor old Ray Radford rolled his car about 3 times. It was so packed that the back of the grid, sort of 30 odd people on the grid, but he's okay, and he had a big smile on his face as well.
I'm not sure you're trying to encourage people to go Caterham racing or put them off at the moment, Paul.
It's a rare thing. It is, you know that. It
happens in Formula 4 single team. Formula 4 single teams that say, my very first race, I came out to see a corner in the middle of the pack, and it was his car barrel rolling along in the air beside me. Oh, this is real motor racing, is it? My first race.
But it's a testament to the cars. These little Caterhams are bulletproof. Yeah. You look at them, you think they're going to fall apart, but they're so solid. And I can testify for that, and so can Ray. But, and the marshals were amazing at Snetton, I have to say. Absolutely first class.
I mean, it doesn't happen every race. Let's point that out.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. It's a rare thing.
It will happen to you one day. Someone's going to take you out. And, they'll apologise, and you'll all move on to the next race, assuming you've got the money to repair the damage.
Yes. Well, thankfully, Caterham are looking after us. So thank you, Caterham. And on that note, thanks for joining us. And we've got next week. Next week. What to look forward to next week?
Yeah, well, this weekend, I wouldn't know where to sit. I'm actually down in Monaco, sitting on a boat, drinking champagne, entertaining some corporate. Well, someone's got to entertain these corporate guests. I mean, I'm there. But honestly, I almost wish I was at home because, I mean, you just won't know. You're in your chair forever because in Monaco, of course, the Grand Prix qualifying is going to be the most exciting bit. I mean, that's going to be nail biting. They're so close now at the front for single lap times. And, you know, now the Mercedes got rid of their pogoing. I was imagining trying to pogo around the swimming pool, which would have been pretty scary. Or pogoing up there. Yeah, it looks like a pogo. I'm making the pogo. So Formula 2 cars are there for their 2 races again. And as I said, the Porsche Super Cup, which I don't normally talk about too much, but Harry King, who finished 3rd in the first round at Imola, he won a race he's doing the Benelux Championship as well. So he's our young star. He can get up there. I think he could win the Monaco Porsche race. Then you got the Indianapolis 500. course, that's going to be later in the day. So you can probably watch the Grand Prix and you can watch the Indianapolis 500. But then you've got MotoGP and Mugello. But they're in the morning. So you've got so early morning, you've got Moto3, Moto2, and that'll be start. So you start about 8 a.m. Watching Moto3s in your armchair. Then you can go to Monaco for the Formula 2s. And of course, Formula 2 on the Saturday. And then you've got to go to the Indy 500. But in between, you've got to quickly go through the BTCCs at Thruxton, which is the place to be for home fans, and watch a bit of that somehow. But there's also the British GT at Donington. So if you're a real GT fan, you can go to Donington. And then by the time all that's happened, you come and collapse in your armchair with a large brandy and watch the NASCAR from Charlotte. So good luck to you all.
I'm exhausted just thinking about it. Thanks for joining. See you next week.
See you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.